Have you ever noticed how in the exact moment life demands your best, your mind feels the most chaotic? Your heart races, your thoughts scatter, and suddenly even simple decisions feel overwhelming. But what if I told you that in those high-pressure moments, there are people who don't just survive, they become unbelievably clear, calm, and unstoppable? The difference isn't talent, it isn't luck, it's hidden psychological control. Today, you're about to discover 8 powerful mental clarity tricks that can completely change how your brain responds to stress forever. Stress doesn't break people. What it really does is reveal what was never trained. Imagine 2 people standing in the exact same situation. Same pressure, same deadline, same uncertainty. One of them panics, overthinks, freezes. The other becomes focused, calm, almost sharp, like their mind just switched into a higher gear. Most people think mental clarity is something you either have or you don't. That's the first illusion. Mental clarity is not a personality trait. It's a trained response. And once you understand that, everything begins to change. The truth is, your brain under stress doesn't want clarity. It wants safety. It wants to escape, avoid, delay. That's why your thoughts become noisy. That's why you replay worst-case scenarios. That's why you feel stuck. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There are specific psychological triggers that can override this chaos. The first shift starts with something surprisingly simple. Control your breathing, but not in the way you've been told. Your brain needs rhythm, not just depth. When your breathing becomes slow and consistent, your nervous system receives a signal. We are not in danger. And once that signal is accepted, something powerful happens. Your thoughts begin to organize. Think of your mind like a stormy ocean. You can't stop the storm immediately, but you can stop feeding it. Breath is how you stop feeding it. Clarity doesn't come from removing stress. It comes from directing attention. When stress hits, your attention scatters everywhere. But high performers narrow their focus aggressively. They think about the next step only. Reduce your mental field. Instead of asking, how do I fix everything? Ask, what is the next smallest action I can take? Because your brain can't process clarity when it's overloaded, but it can handle one step, always. Momentum is clarity in motion. Now, let's go deeper. There's a hidden reason why stress feels so overwhelming. The meaning you attach to it. If your mind labels something as too much, your body reacts. But if it's labeled as challenge, your brain activates differently. When you consciously reframe pressure as a test, you stop seeing it as a threat and start seeing it as engagement. Reframe the pressure instantly. Instead of "this is too much," say "this is my moment to focus." It's subtle, but powerful. Notice how when you're stressed, your shoulders tense, your jaw tightens, your body is signaling danger. But what if you reverse it? Consciously relax your shoulders, slow your movements, and sit upright. Your brain starts receiving a new signal. We are in control. Internal silence. Most people can't handle it, because when everything gets quiet, their thoughts get louder. Mastering high-pressure situations means sitting in that silence without reacting. Detach from your thoughts. They don't all deserve attention. Clarity is not about thinking more. It's about thinking less, but better. Remove the unnecessary ones. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me right now? If not, let it go. And slowly, your mind becomes lighter. Imagine you're in a high-pressure moment. Everyone around you is reacting emotionally. There's tension, urgency, noise. But you feel different. You're aware, calm, focused. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. That's the power of mental clarity. It's trainable, but only if you stop reacting automatically and start responding intentionally. Stress doesn't control your mind. Your training does. Stop being a victim of pressure and start using it as fuel. There's a moment in every high-pressure situation that most people miss. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It appears quietly right between reaction and response. And in that tiny space lies your power. Most people never notice it because they move too fast. Stress hits and instantly they react. Words spill out. Decisions get rushed. Emotions take control. Later, they regret it. Not because they didn't know better, but because they didn't pause. But the people who maintain absolute mental clarity do something different. They stretch that moment just by a few seconds, and those few seconds change everything. This is psychological trick number 5. Create a controlled pause. When pressure rises, your instinct will push you to act immediately. But immediate action is often emotional, not intelligent. The pause interrupts that pattern. It gives your brain time to catch up with your emotions. And in that space, clarity begins. Now, here's the key. The pause is not hesitation, it's control. Hesitation is driven by fear. Pause is driven by awareness. So when you feel overwhelmed, don't rush to respond. Let there be a moment where nothing happens. No words, no decisions, just awareness. You'll be surprised how much clearer things look even after a few seconds. Now let's go deeper into something most people underestimate: your environment. You might think mental clarity is purely internal, but your surroundings shape your thoughts more than you realize. Noise, clutter, distractions, they all compete for your attention, and attention is your most valuable resource under stress. When your environment is chaotic, your mind mirrors that chaos. But when your environment is controlled, your brain finds it easier to focus. This is psychological trick number 6. Reduce external noise to reduce internal noise. It doesn't mean you need a perfect environment, but small adjustments make a difference. Lower the volume of distractions. Step away for a moment. Even shifting your position can reset your focus. Because clarity isn't just created internally, it's supported externally. Now, here's something that separates average performers from exceptional ones. They don't rely on motivation. Motivation is unreliable, especially under stress. It fades, it fluctuates, it disappears when you need it most. Instead, they rely on systems. Simple mental systems that guide their actions, even when emotions are unstable. One of the most powerful systems is this: define your role in the moment. When everything feels overwhelming, your brain struggles because it's trying to handle too many identities at once. But clarity comes when you simplify. Ask yourself, what is my role right now? Not forever, just right now. Maybe your role is to listen. Maybe it's to decide. Maybe it's to act. But once that role is clear, your mind stops wandering. This is psychological trick number 7. Simplify your identity under pressure. Clarity comes from being one thing at a time. Now, let's talk about something deeper. Fear. Fear is not the enemy of clarity. Misunderstood, fear is. When fear appears, most people try to push it away, ignore it, but that resistance makes it stronger. What if instead you acknowledged it, not dramatically, just simply noticing it? I feel pressure, I feel uncertainty, and then continue. This is psychological trick number 8. Acknowledge without attachment. You don't fight the feeling. You just notice it and move forward. Clarity is not a constant state. Even the most focused minds experience moments of confusion. The difference is, they recover faster. When something goes wrong, they don't turn one mistake into a mental storm. They reset quickly. So how do you reset your mind? You interrupt the pattern. One simple way is through physical movement. Stand up, walk a few steps, because your brain associates movement with change. And when your body changes, your mind follows. Now, imagine this scenario. You're in a situation where everything feels urgent. Pressure is building. But now something is different. You pause. You breathe with rhythm. You narrow your focus to one step. And suddenly, your mind feels clear. Not because the situation became easier, but because you became stronger within it. Clarity is always available. Even in chaos, even in uncertainty, but only if you know how to access it. There's a hidden trap: overanalysis. You think more to find clarity, but the more you think, the more confused you become. Instead of asking, what should I do? Ask specific ones. What is the best next step? What matters most right now? Your inner dialogue shapes your experience. If your inner voice is chaotic, your mind will reflect that. Instead of "I can't handle this," shift it to "focus on the next step." These are not affirmations. They are instructions. Imagine being in situations where others lose control and you remain centered. Where others hesitate and you act with clarity. That's not luck, that's training. Mental clarity is not built in comfort, it's built in pressure. And every time you choose to respond differently, you're rewiring your mind. Slowly, powerfully, permanently. There's a level of pressure where most techniques stop working. Breathing helps, pausing helps, reframing helps. But then there are moments where everything feels too intense. The noise is louder, the stakes feel higher, and your mind starts slipping again. This is where a deeper kind of control is required. Not surface level.com, but internal stability. Because at extreme levels of stress, your mind doesn't just react in fragments. One part of you wants to act, another wants to escape, another starts imagining outcomes that haven't even happened yet. And that internal conflict destroys clarity. So the question becomes, how do you stay mentally aligned when everything inside you feels divided? The answer lies in something most people never practice: mental anchoring. Think of it like this. When a ship is caught in a storm, it doesn't fight the ocean. It drops an anchor, not to stop the storm, but to stay grounded within it. Your mind works the same way. Under pressure, you need an anchor, something stable, something certain, something that doesn't change even when everything else does. This is psychological trick number 9. Create a mental anchor. It can be a simple phrase, a principle, a belief, but it must be something you trust completely. Something like, I handle pressure with focus, or one step at a time, or even, stay present. The exact words don't matter as much as the consistency. Because when your mind starts drifting into chaos, the anchor pulls it back, not instantly, but reliably. And over time, that anchor becomes automatic. Now here's where it gets even more powerful. Your brain doesn't just respond to words, it responds to patterns. If you repeat the same anchor in high-pressure situations, your mind starts associating that phrase with control. So eventually, just thinking it begins to shift your state. That's not motivation, that's conditioning. Now let's move into something even deeper. Decision fatigue. Under stress, your ability to make decisions weakens. Not because you're incapable, but because your mental energy is being drained faster than usual. And when that energy drops, your brain looks for shortcuts. That's when people make impulsive choices or avoid decisions altogether. But those who maintain clarity do something different. They reduce the number of decisions they need to make. This is psychological trick number 10. Pre-decide what you can. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. If you already know how you'll respond to certain situations, you don't waste energy figuring it out in the moment. For example, you can decide in advance, when I feel overwhelmed, I will pause. When pressure rises, I will focus on the next step. When I feel doubt, I will return to my anchor. These are pre-decisions, and they protect your clarity when your mind is under strain. Now here's something that most people misunderstand: confidence. People think confidence creates clarity, but in reality, clarity creates confidence. When your mind is clear, your actions become precise. And when your actions are precise, your confidence grows naturally. But when your mind is scattered, even simple tasks feel uncertain. So instead of chasing confidence, focus on clarity. Confidence will follow. Now let's go into a powerful shift that very few people make: letting go of outcomes. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop attaching your mental state to results you can't fully control. Because when you're too focused on outcomes, your mind starts projecting into the future. What if this fails? What if this goes wrong? And suddenly, your clarity is no longer in the present. It's lost in possibilities. But high-level performers do something different. They focus entirely on execution, not results. This is psychological trick number 11. Detach from outcome, attach to action. Because action is within your control. And when your attention stays within your control, your mind remains stable. Now here's something subtle, but critical. Speed. Under stress, people either move too fast or too slow. Too fast leads to mistakes. Too slow leads to hesitation. But clarity exists in a specific rhythm. Not rushed, not delayed, just deliberate. This is something you can feel once you become aware of it. Every action has a pace where it feels controlled. When you find that pace, your mind aligns with it. So instead of reacting to pressure with speed, respond with rhythm. This keeps your thinking sharp. Now let's talk about attention again. But from a deeper perspective, your attention is like a spotlight. Wherever you direct it, becomes your reality. If your attention is on problems, your mind feels overwhelmed. If your attention is on solutions, your mind feels engaged. But here's the key. You can't focus on both at the same time. So in high-stress situations, train yourself to shift your attention intentionally. From what's wrong, to what can I do? From why is this happening, to what's next? This is not ignoring reality. It's directing your mental energy toward usefulness, and usefulness creates clarity. Now, imagine this. You're in a moment where everything feels intense. Your mind starts drifting toward fear. But instead of following it, you bring your attention back to your anchor, to your breath, and suddenly, you're back in control. Not perfectly, but enough. And enough is all you need to move forward. Now here's something deeper than techniques. Identity. The way you see yourself under pressure determines how you behave. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with stress, your mind will follow that pattern. But if you start seeing yourself as someone who handles pressure with clarity, something begins to shift. Because your brain is always trying to stay consistent with your identity. This is psychological trick number 12. Upgrade your self-image. Not through empty statements, but through small, repeated actions. Every time you stay calm when you could have panicked, you reinforce that identity. Every time you focus when you could have distracted yourself, you strengthen it. And over time, it becomes natural. Now, let's go even deeper. There's a hidden layer beneath all of this. Awareness of awareness. Most people are aware of their thoughts, but very few are aware that they are aware. And that second layer creates distance. When you can notice that you're thinking without getting pulled into the thought, you gain control. Because now, you're not inside the chaos. You're observing it. And from that position, clarity becomes accessible again. This is not something you master instantly. But even brief moments of this awareness can change how you experience pressure. Now imagine combining everything you've learned so far. You have your breath under control. You pause instead of reacting. You narrow your focus. You use your anchor. You detach from outcomes. You act with rhythm. You direct your attention. You reinforce your identity. And suddenly, pressure doesn't feel the same anymore. It's still there, but it doesn't control you. You move through it with intention, and that's the difference. Because at the highest level, mental clarity is not about eliminating stress. It's about becoming someone who remains clear, even when stress is present.